Hello everybody! Welcome or welcome back to BnB Anime. It is Blue. Today, unfortunately, Brad could not make it to recording due to personal reasons, so you're just stuck with me. We also have a change of plans. Last week, we said that we were going to have another slime time by recording. I've been killing slimes for 300 years and have maxed out my level, but due to the fact that Brad cannot make it for us for recording today, I decided that we should hold off on that one and record that one another time because I think it would be so much better with the two of us sitting down to go over that one. So today we have another Ghibli film from just me. Yeah, so I hope you enjoy this podcast of just me. It's going to be a little bit more rambly than normal because Brad helps to keep me on track. But don't worry, he will be back again next week. Quick note before we properly jump in, I just want to go over how our schedule works because I know for a few times previously we have said we will get back to an anime that we have skipped for one reason or another, and it seems like we never end up getting back to it. We do keep them on the schedule. It's just that we have our schedule planned weeks and weeks in advance because we plan around things like when new series are going to end, or new seasons are going to end, or new releases are coming, and so those are kind of like ones we can't move because we want to get them out to you guys as soon as the season is ended. We want to get out our review, our conversation on the subject, and so we slot in some other things whenever we can, and those ones that we slot in tend to kind of get pushed around a little bit. So if you have heard that we were going to cover something and we haven't gotten back to it, you can shoot us a reminder on our social medias at BnB Anime. Hey, cover this one, you said you were gonna and you haven't gotten back to it, please do it, and we can maybe look at bumping it up in the schedule, but for the most part they just get tacked on at the end and we do work our way round to them. So I've been killing slimes for 300 years and I've maxed out my level. May come next week, I'm not sure, or it may come at some point in the future. We are definitely going to cover it though. I'm just not sure exactly when because, like I said, the schedule is kind of built around like several things. So we'll see when it comes out. But yes, From Up on Poppy Hill is what we're going to be covering today. But before we get into that, we always do our daily spiel of what we've been up to. I haven't been up to much, honestly, since the last time that I recorded. I am now officially in Toronto. I have started my classes as of Friday. And, I don't know, I'm just kind of chilling and hanging out. I still have to get some art supplies. It has been very cold here. I feel like I brought the cold weather with me from Alberta because it was really cold in Alberta. Toronto is normally not that cold, like because of the lakes and the just location of Toronto. It doesn't normally get as cold as it does in Alberta. But for some reason, I think I brought it with me. I don't think it's ever going to get Alberta cold, but it is definitely cold for Toronto, which, ow, it just just hit my hand on the desk. But yeah, it is what it is. I don't know. Things are still in pretty heavy lockdown out here, so I haven't been able to go to my favourite cafe and things like that. I've actually been pretty much quarantining myself since I've come, since I've flown over. I haven't left the house really since, just to pick up some grocery bits, since I landed here, just in case I picked something up at the airport. So yeah, I've just been in my apartment hanging out. I have a nice cup of tea. I've had a lemon square cake thing, piece of lemon loaf. I don't know. Ooh, I did think of something. I thought of a plot for an isekai that I thought would be really fun. So instead of the classic isekai person gets transported to a magical world, a reverse isekai would be really funny. Kind of like the devil works a part-time. The devil is a part-timer. That's the one. But that kind of vibe, but somebody from a magical world who has a really good adventurer with all of these magical powers in this fantasy realm gets transported to regular Tokyo. And I see that instead of getting hit by Truck Sama, they could get hit by Carriage Sama or whatever, I don't know, and get life swapped with somebody else. It would be fun if they did it as a mirror play so you could see both people having swapped each other's lives as opposed to just one person transported. It would be funny to see the two parallels, but just seeing them being mind blown over electricity and cars and movies and manga and like media, you know? Because of course that doesn't exist in the fantasy realm. And then like struggling to not just like use magic for mundane tasks. I think it would be really fun. So I actually don't know if that's already a thing. If it is already a thing, send me the manga because I would be so interested in reading it. I don't know. I thought of that and was like, I have to share. That's fun. Yes, anyway, so from Up on Poppy Hill. Let's just jump into it. I always feel a bit lost when I do these by myself. I don't know what, like what the structure is supposed to be. I don't have any news. Brad does the news. Don't ask me to keep up with current events. That's not my forte. I can't do that. So no news this week. But yes, from Up on Poppy Hill, we have, okay, I guess we start with the backgrounds. Brad does this normally. We start with the background stuff and then we go into the other bits. Yeah, Studio Ghibli. It is a 92-minute film. It was made on July 16th, 2000, released on July 16th, 2011 in Japan. It was directed by Miyazaki. You've heard Brad absolutely, like, gush over him so many times. This is another one of Miyazaki's creations. Well, there are two Miyazakis here. One wrote the screenplay, one directed it. It's a family affair. You know what I mean. And it actually got $22 million for a budget and $61.5 million worldwide for the box office. So made a fair profit. Yeah, it is on Canadian Netflix. That's where I watched it. So if you have access to Canadian Netflix, you can go and jump on there. It says, it's rated G. It was based on a 1979 manga by a name that I'm gonna butcher here. Kokyu Likot Zakakara, I think. Yeah, I apparently read that about it. It won Animation of the Year award in the 35th Japan Academy Prize and in the 11th Tokyo Anime Award. So, and then in 2013 it won the Best Foreign Animation Family Trailer during the 14th Golden Trailer Awards and tied with The Wind Rises for Best Animated Feature in the 12th Utah Films Critics Association. So there you go. Lots of awards. Very critically acclaimed, I guess. I don't know. It's rated a 7.81 on my anime list and out of 10 and a 4.08 out of 5 on Anime Planet, or an 8.16 out of 10. So pretty much like a 8 average, 8 out of 10. And its drop rate is 0.25%. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Films have a lower drop rate because people tend to not drop them halfway through a film. They'll like watch to the end even if it's a bad film. Whereas they will not start a new episode because there's a break. So I feel like if films had... You remember like in The Sound of Music and stuff where they have intermissions because the films are really, really long? I feel like if modern films had intermissions, we would probably see the drop rate go up quite a substantial amount. That would actually be a fascinating study to see how much an advert break or an intermission causes people to click off of shows. I wonder if there's like been a paper on that. Like if you have a movie channel that has ads and a movie channel that doesn't have ads and they both play the same film, the amount of people that click off would probably differ quite heavily on the channel that has ads, and I would be interested to see how much that it does. Because not only does it extend the runtime, but it also breaks up the viewing experience, you know what I mean? Anyway, just thoughts that I've had. Rated G. I was not expecting this. So this is a kind of a romance, historical school, very... how do I describe it? It's like very nostalgic romance, I guess is the way to describe it. It's set just like a few years before the Olympic Games in Tokyo that like the 64, I think it is, the 1964 Tokyo Olympics. And but it's set like a few years before that, so it's like the country is in preparation for the Olympics happening. And it's based around a young girl and a young boy in high school, and the possible demolition of one of the buildings on the school that is kind of like a student, like a heartfelt student building, like they enjoy it a lot, you know what I mean? And so it's about their relationship with each other and also finding their identity. It's a very, it's a Ghibli film, so you're going into it knowing that it's going to be beautiful, it's going to give you that atmosphere that a Ghibli film just always provides. I will say that I felt that this one was a little bit longer than others, like it felt longer than others. But yeah, overall I enjoyed it. So I'm going to put on the spoiler chicken hats now. If you haven't seen it, I recommended that you do go and watch it. Like I said, it is available on Canadian Netflix. But I will say that this is not my favourite Ghibli film of the ones that I have watched so far. I have only ever watched and reviewed Ghibli films here on the podcast. I have never seen a Ghibli film that wasn't for the podcast. So yeah, you're getting to know all of my first thoughts from the very first Ghibli film I've ever watched all the way through to hopefully when I've completed the collection. This one is probably my least favourite of the ones that I've watched so far, even though it is so mystically romantic, but I'll get into why I feel like that in a moment. So yeah, spoiler chicken hats on, I'm just gonna have a sip of tea. I made that sound like I had a tea sponsorship or something. I don't. If there's any tea company out there that wants to sponsor me, though, I will happily take that sponsorship. An English girl can't get enough. So, yeah, starting off, let me just grab the character list. Here we go. So we're starting off with Umi. She is our main character. We also have Shun, who is her romantic interest, and her supporting actor, main character, you know what I mean, like he's the love interest in the show. So we start off with her, and the very, very picturesque opening of the movie is her running through the house and preparing breakfast for everyone who is at the house, and raising these signal flags she's on the coast, and raising these signal flags for the incoming ships. The house that she's in, it's never actually stated, like, verbatim, but I'm assuming it's a kind of a board house. It was a hospital. It's explained later on that it was a hospital that they've converted. And judging from the people that are there, it's all women that are living in this house, so I'm assuming that it's kind of like a long-term bed and breakfast kind of thing, like a board, room and board. You don't really get those kinds of things, at least out here in the West these days. I know that my grandma used to do that for university students when I was growing up, and when my mum was growing up, because my mum's the youngest of 5, so they had a lot of rooms in their house. And I know that when the older siblings started to move out, my grandma would rent out rooms for university students, specifically if they were from abroad, which is actually how my uncle met my aunt from Japan, which is kind of romantic. And so I know that that's like a thing, but I'm not sure, I haven't heard of people doing that out here in Canada, or at least where I live out in Canada. Maybe they do it more on the coast, or maybe they even do it more in here in Toronto or like in surrounding areas. I don't know. I lived in the middle of nowhere in Alberta, so nobody would want to come and stay. But yeah, so I'm assuming it's kind of like a women's board house that they've converted it to. So she gets up early and she's making breakfast to everybody in the house. She has 2 siblings in the house and someone who she calls grandma, but I don't know if it's actually blood-related grandma or if it's just an elderly woman who also lives in the house. Never really established, or at least in the translation is not established. It's always hard to tell if I'm like missing details because of translation, like it's just not, you miss the nuances sometimes, or if it's just not explained. So I'm assuming blood-related grandma, but yeah, it's not explained. And her mom is an absentee, and her father has passed away in the Korean War. He was a sailor, and he was the one who taught her how to use signal flags. When she goes to school that morning, she sees that there has been a poem written in the school paper about the girl who raises signal flags on the hill. And one of the women in the house has noticed that there is a tugboat that also raises signal flags in response, but she can't see them from where she is when she's raising them. Only the guests can see from like the top floor. So she doesn't actually know that there's this boat that's been responding to her signal flags. So they go through the school day, and as they go through the school day, she ends up bumping into Shun and a couple of other students who are who have this demonstration, shall I say, where they're trying to raise awareness about the fact that the school board wants to tear down the clubhouse. This was something that I found rather charming. I mean, all Ghibli films, Ghibli film. It's a hard G, right? It's a Ghibli, not a Ghibli, because if it was a Ghibli, it would be J. Ghibli, right? I don't know. Yeah, so it's rather charming. Shun jumps off of the roof of the school building into a very unclean pool. I think they're in their winter uniforms. They have long sleeves, so they're in their winter uniforms. So it's obviously not very warm, and the pool has like the cover on it and stuff, so they pull the cover off and he jumps off from the roof into the pool as they pull down these banners to be able to get awareness spread about the fact that the school board wants to tear down this clubhouse. Umi, who had made eye contact with him before he jumps, then rushes over to the sides of the pool to see if he's okay, and he holds his hand out to like help me up. And she grabs his hand, and then the two guys that are taking pictures of the newspapers are like, hey, look over here! And she gets flustered, obviously, and releases his hand, and he falls back into the water and has to get pulled out by somebody else. But it's very cute. And very quickly, in the film, you're establishing that the two young students have a crush on each other. And I will say that Shun is very suave. He is very charming. He has some very, very good moves that I think would work to this day. They just haven't been used. For instance, at one time she has to get food, I think some pork or something, for the house because she had been helping out clean up the clubhouse. No, she'd been helping with he runs the newspaper, right? He helps on the school paper. So she'd been helping with the paper because her handwriting was very neat, so she was doing the stencil for them to then do the printing press. And she ended up being late. So on her way home, so then she gets home and she realizes that she's late for dinner and has to run out to go get some food, some meat, and she leaves the house, and as she leaves, he strolls on by on his bicycle and basically says, hop on, going to the market, and he cycles her down all the way into the market, and then buys her a snack because he says, oh, I need more energy for myself to get home because I live by the coast, so here, you might as well have one as well. And it was very, very smooth, very, very suave. It's the kind of thing that would work to this day. Buy each other snacks if you're feeling romantic and give them rides on bicycles. Those kinds of things are timeless classics. I feel like it's one of those tropes where everyone's like you watch old films and you see it happen frequently. If you have any film that's set before the 1970s, I would say, and even some films that set in the 1970s, but films prior to the 1970s, it was all about, hey, hop on the back of my bike, and now it's all about, hey, hop in my car. But if there's anybody that you have that's kind of a romantic, or they are like they are interested in old films or old books or something like that, and you try the hop on the back of my bike thing, they would probably die. So give it a go. I don't know. Have you ever ridden with somebody on the back of your bike? I did when I was very small, but I haven't for a long time. I used to ride my bike to and from school all the time, all the way in primary school and in middle school here as well, so I don't know. I don't actually have a bike right now. I need to get a bike. But it's really hard for me to get a bike because I have to get, because the seats and the handles don't go up high enough because I have long legs. I have to get, men's bikes. I'm sure there are big enough women's bikes, but they're expensive. Anyway, tangent. Sip of my tea. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna have a sip of my tea. I'm just sitting at my desk, like, waving around a mug of tea in my hand, never actually drinking it, but I talk with my hands, so I'm just waving around a mug instead of my hands. Sounds like a really non-dangerous thing to do when you're clumsy and in front of hundreds of dollars of computer equipment. Put it down! Okay. So where are we at? Yeah, so over time, the two of them are just bonding. They are building and reconstructing this old clubhouse. They're having, the students having debates. A lot of the students were against restoring the clubhouse. Well, they didn't even consider restoring it. They were against keeping the clubhouse the way that it was, because of the fact that the school board wanted to build a new one, so they were all for knocking it down. But then the girls come in because of Umi's idea to, like, clean everything up, and the whole school pretty much ends up partaking some way or another in cleaning up and restoring the clubhouse, all the way from just, like, dusting, to changing light bulbs, restoring banisters, plastering walls, hammering shelves in. Like, they do so much work. And at some point during this, one of the women who are boarding at Umi's house is a doctor, and she is moving on to her next location. And so they have a farewell party for her. Umi invites a couple of the lads from school, including Shun, and when the two of them are at the party, they kind of escape for a little while, and Umi kind of gives Shun a tour through the old hospital, or which is now the board house. They end up going into the mom's office, her mom's office, and he asks about her father, and she shows him the pictures, and it turns out, well, and then Shun gets really quiet and everything, and then leaves, and then for a few days afterwards, he's just kind of ignoring her, and she's really, like, confused as to why, and she thinks that maybe she did something wrong, but she doesn't really know, so she ends up waiting for him outside of the school, one rainy day, and they end up walking together home, and she basically says, if you don't like me, you could have just said so. He says, actually, the people who take care of me right now, my mom and my dad, aren't my mom and my dad. They're my adoptive mom and dad. My dad is your dad. I even checked at the town registry. Yeah, my family, like, we have the same dad. We're brother and sister. And, yeah. The whole movie takes a turn from there. I don't know how I felt at this point. I think, like, you kind of know when, like, I've already put on the spoiler warning, so if you don't want to hear the end of the movie, like, I'm gonna spoil it now. But you kind of know at this point that there is, like, that they're not related. But also, because it's a Ghibli film, and Ghibli films, I will say, rarely have strong romantic interaction. A lot of the time it's the borderline between friendship and romance, and you don't ever get that full push through to romance. You're then sitting there and thinking, oh, so they were just friends the whole time, you know, and it wasn't romantic, and now they're upset because they're siblings but they weren't having a romantic inclination. But no, trust me, they were having a romantic inclination. But you do kind of get that border of a moment of, like, so wait, they didn't like each other and they were just friends, or they did like each other but now they found out they're siblings. And it's the latter. They did like each other and now they found out they're siblings. As time progresses, he asks his adoptive father about his real dad, and he says the same thing that he already knew, that the man in the picture is his dad, and he one day he turned up to the two of them, to his mom and his dad, and holding a baby, and they had just lost a child themselves, and he said, can you care for the baby? And mom just, like, grabbed him, and that was that. They became his parents. And it was a very common thing at the time. They explain it in the film as well. But, like, a lot of people had died because of the wars, and there were a lot of orphans, and so people who wanted children but couldn't have them were just kind of taking them and putting them in family registries, and there wasn't really any official adoption or anything. Like, the orphan, like, he would have gone to an orphanage, but, like, a lot of people weren't going through those processes. There was just a baby and they just took it, you know? And that's kind of what happened with him. And so more time progresses and Umi and Shun kind of try and make it work with just being friends, but both of them still have feelings for each other. And then they end up finishing up cleaning up this house, the clubhouse. But they find out that the board still wants to close the building down. Like, they've what is it? They've swung over? There's a saying that I'm looking for, I can't think of. But they've persuaded the student body, but they just haven't, persuaded the board yet. They don't have any access to the board, and the principal isn't speaking up for them. So, Shun, Umi, and Shiro, who is kind of the mastermind behind the whole thing. He's kind of like the leader, and then Shun and Umi are kind of like his sidekicks, in a sense. Shun is kind of like the guy who does all the crazy stunts for it, and is the very suave, like the girls have made a fan club for him. Shiro seems to be like I think he's like the student body president or something, so he's like the guy who does the paperwork behind it. And then Umi's the one who comes up with the ideas. Like, she's the one who was like, we should clean and restore the place. And they end up considering her their good luck charm. So the three of them decide to skip school one day and go to Tokyo to get in contact with the board chairman and get him to come and visit the building, because if he visits the building, then he'll see what they've all done with it. And because the building has been there for like decades at this point, and hopefully then they'll be all chill and they'll be able to keep the building. And so they go, and they're waiting there in the office, and they're waiting and they're waiting and they're waiting, and finally they're allowed into the office, and the chairman kind of puts his foot in his mouth when he talks to Umi, and he's like, oh, what did your dad do? And she's like, dead. And because of that, he kind of like develops a connection with her and is like, okay, I basically pity you, so I'm gonna come and see the school. And so the next day, he comes down to the school. Oh, before that though, can I just say that Shiro is the, probably one of the best wingmen that I've seen in anime in a while. They're in Tokyo, and the three of them are walking together. And everyone kind of knows that Umi and Shun have like a thing together. Nobody knows that they're potentially siblings at this point. So Shiro sees the two of them, like the three of them together, and he's like, I'm gonna dip. I'm going to my uncle's house, peace. And so he leaves, and so the two of them then end up having to make their way home from Tokyo together. And whilst they're waiting for a tram, Umi basically says, she does say to him, I don't care that we're siblings, I still have feelings for you. And Shun responds, I still have feelings for you too. Which is awkward as a viewer. It's awkward to watch. It's one of those things that you're like, ah, that's sweet, but also no. You know what I mean? So you're like watching it and you're like, I get that you have these emotions and you cannot control your emotions in this, like, you didn't know you were siblings until you'd already caught feelings. But, like, don't you just get, like, ick? It's really one of those things where you want to be with them. You know, you want to be with the main characters. You want to support them in their endeavors, and you're like, yes, main characters. But they're siblings, so no, main characters don't. But, like, also you're sitting there as a viewer and you're hoping, okay, but they can't be siblings, right? There's got to be some mix-up here, like, they're not actually siblings. But you don't know at this point, so you're left on that edge of questioning. And it's, I won't say uncomfortable to watch, because it doesn't quite border in that area for me, but I will say it's not as romantic as the situation could have been if it wasn't that they were possibly siblings. You know what I mean? It's like, if it was like a Romeo and Juliet scenario where their parents weren't allowed to be together, much like Umi's parents were, they were a bit of a Romeo and Juliet situation and ended up eloping. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's just, you can't support the characters in the way that you want to support the characters. So anyway, that night, Umi gets home and her mum is home. And her mum was abroad in America as a professor. And so she hasn't been there for like however many months. I'm assuming at least like a full year or a full semester, because she was like teaching in America. So a good amount of time she was away. And so she gets home and Umi then confronts her that night saying, hey, I found a boy at school named Shun Kazuma. Do you know him? And she's like, yes, let me tell you the story. And so she says, when she was pregnant with Umi, her husband, Umi's dad, came home one night with a baby. And he said to her that it was his crewmates, like his shipmates' son, and that he had died. The baby's mother had died in childbirth, and the rest of the family had been killed in like bombings, and so completely orphaned child. He went to the registry office and registered the baby as his, so that the baby wouldn't go into the orphanages. They were going to keep the baby, but they couldn't, with the fact that she was heavily pregnant with Umi at the time, and she wanted to stay in school to become a professor, and he is a sailor, he's captain of a ship, so he was frequently away for months at a time, so leaving his wife alone with two babies was just not feasible. Which was when they discovered that an old friend, like a local sailor fisherman friend, and his wife had just lost a child, so they took the child to them. So then the question remains, did Umi's father have an affair, have a son with somebody else, then bring it back with this tale of the third person that had this child? Or is this story true? Is this story legitimate? So the mom asks Umi, who does he look like in the picture? Does he look like your dad? Like, who does he look like? Does he look like the other guy? Like, what's going on? I can't remember if it's exactly like that. I think it's a little bit different than that. But basically, and you're left with this question of, you're kind of piecing it together that that's how it is. But throughout the whole film, once you find out that they're siblings, you are just left with this, like, so her dad had an affair. Shun's her half-brother. You know what I mean? It's a whole... It doesn't feel very Ghibli, I guess, is the thing. Ghibli is like Totoro and Kiki's Delivery Service is not Secret Affairs and Love Children. Like, this is... I don't know. This is the first time that I've experienced this side of Ghibli. And it was a very interesting experience. It was very, I don't know, I wasn't expecting it, shall we put it that way. And so then, the next day, the chairman comes to the school, and he sees the new building, and he approves the new building, and the chairman is great, love him, he's great. And he approves the old building, he's like, yeah, love it, love the renovations that you've done, good work guys, I'm just gonna build the new building elsewhere. Yay, everybody wins, fantastic. In comes Shun, who just received a phone call from his adopted dad to be like, hey, there's the third man in the picture, because it's the three men in the picture, is at the docks right now. He's leaving at like 4 p.m. I'm assuming it's the end of the school day, so it must be like 3:05, 3:15, 3 o'clock, around that time. He's leaving at 4. Get yourself down to the harbour right now, because you won't see him again for months. He's on a huge carrier ship, like you're not going to see him again. Get yourself down here. And so Shun runs back into the building, grabs hold of Umi's hand, the two of them run out, to the sound of applause from everyone who thinks it's a huge romantic endeavour, which it kind of is in a way, but also they're siblings possibly at this point. They run down to the harbour, get onto the ship, and once they're on the ship, the captain of the ship confirms that Shun is the son of one of the sailors, Umi is the son of the other, he is the third sailor in the picture, and he blesses the two of them being together, basically. And then, he is able to say the story of, like, you're one kid, you're the other kid, you're not siblings, your fathers were best friends, though. we were a trio. And so they leave the ship, and they get onto the tugboat, and sail on home. And the movie ends with Umi raising the signal flags like she did for her father every single day. And it's a very cute ending. It's a very picturesque ending. I like the way that the ending is the same as the beginning. I like films that have that repetitive cycle, especially slice of life type films where it's just like a segment of someone's life that's just kind of fairly mundane. I mean, obviously there's a decently exciting plot, but this isn't something... Like, the people living this life wouldn't consider this to be an exciting part of their life, if you know what I mean. Like, they would just be like, oh yeah, this is just an everyday occurrence for me. And that is kind of my favourite thing about slice of life films. I love films and books and series that are just a slice of life, a snippet of somebody's existence that is just kind of mundane. I'm nosy like that. I like to know what people do when they're not doing anything. And I think the starting and ending something with the same imagery is a really good way to just reinforce that this is just another repetitive day in somebody's life. And so, ending off, although I think it's very romantic, I think that Howl's Moving Castle actually is more romantic, even though I wouldn't necessarily consider Howl's to be primarily a romance, whereas I would consider this to be primarily a romance. I just think because of the level of awkwardness that happens because of the whole sibling dilemma, this ends up kind of tainting the romance, in my opinion. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's a really good watch. It's a really solid watch, and I do recommend that you do watch it if you like anime films. And I want to know your opinions on it. Did you feel like the sibling plotline, like, did it taint the romance for you, or did it just, like, was it, because, I mean, it's the main storyline for the romance, right? So, without it, the romance doesn't really have any significant plot to it, and the whole, then, plot of the film would just be on the clubhouse. Would you prefer it that way, to just be about the clubhouse, and maybe have them go through some other kind of, like, I guess, turmoil to be able to create a plotline? Or do you like it the way it is? How do you feel about it? And I mean, they're high schoolers, so in the Ghibli universe, nothing extensive is going to happen between them. Like, they don't kiss or anything. It's not as bad as it would be, like, if it was on, I don't know, like, any kind of other modern TV show, you know? They would have already done shit, but because it's a Ghibli film, like, they don't. It's rated G. You know what I mean? So, like, there's that level of... I mean, it's not as... fairy tales are much worse. But, like, still, you know what I mean? So, yeah, let me know what you think about it, because I'm conflicted, and I don't know where I sit. But I feel like, okay, Ghibli films, because of the music, because of the visuals, because of the animation, because of the atmosphere that a Ghibli film is just guaranteed to give you, I feel like it's very hard to give a Ghibli film anything less than a 7, just based on that. Just the fact that you go into a Ghibli film and immediately you're caught up in the atmosphere. Immediately you are whisked away to a whimsical world that isn't normally even that whimsical. Like, it's just life, it's just every day. In this world, there wasn't even any magic or anything, but you still feel like you're in this fantasy realm. And there's something really, really special about that, so I find it very hard to give a Ghibli film anything less than a 7. That being said, I feel like a 7 is solid for this film. I don't feel like it's one that I'm going to remember, and if I do remember it, I'm going to remember it for the brother-sister storyline, and not for the fact that it was a really good film. Whereas, like, Howl's Moving Castle, I remember because of the house that moves, and, well, the castle, and the beautiful feathered body that he ends up with, and the hats that she makes, and, like, all of these minor details are the things that I remember. I will say, the details are still on point here in this film. I mean, it's a Ghibli film, you can expect that. The Ghibli logo on the ship, the fingers that move to catch the rope when she's letting the flag down, knife cutting up the lettuce, like, all of these small things are done so incredibly well, which is why I think solid 7. But yeah, I just think that the storyline here was not as good as other Ghibli films that I've watched, and I don't feel like it would be fair to give it anything higher, because when I compare it to things like Kiki's Delivery Service, to Howl's Moving Castle, to My Neighbor Totoro, it's just not holding up in the same way. And I want to know your guys' thoughts too. Is this anybody's favourite Ghibli film? Because I feel like it would be very hard for this to become a favourite Ghibli film. And if it is your favourite Ghibli film, why? Have you seen this one? I feel like this is one that people don't talk about very often. Yeah, watch this and let me know. I have so many questions. Let me know how you feel about this storyline, because yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to feel. But anyway, I think that's probably where I'm going to end it today. A shorter one today because it's just me, so there was still a few tangents in there. You still got a few tangents, but I think I did fairly well at keeping myself on track. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Yeah, so next week, I'm gonna say that we have Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun, but I don't know if we are going to be going with that Monthly Girl. So we may be going with I've Been Killing Slimes for 300 years and maxed out my level. It's debatable. We will see. I don't know. Yeah, anyway, that's it from me. So, plug time. You can find Brad, who unfortunately wasn't here today, but you can find him on Twitch at Brad Carter Gaming. He's also on Instagram at Brad Carter Gaming. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok under Blue Lavender or Blue Lavender STM. Yeah, I tried to get Blue Lavender on all of them, but that didn't happen. And then you can find the podcast, which is probably the one that we're both most active on, at BnB Anime. I have been making daily memes on the Instagram. They're all fresh memes from my brain. Some of them are really dumb. Some of them are... it's always the ones that I think are like the most dumb that do really well. So, yeah, check out the Instagram. And we do have a Twitter and a TikTok at BnB Anime as well, but I don't think many posts have been going up on those. I've been mainly focusing on the Instagram right now. We do also have the website that is getting a huge upgrade at www.bnbanime.com. And yeah, the YouTube channel as well, which is at BnB Anime. Yeah, I think that's everything. I hope you enjoyed this solo episode. Don't worry, if you didn't, Brad will be back next week and he can keep me more on track. If you did like it, let me know as well though, because I do appreciate all of the feedback. Solo episodes are hard to do. You have nobody to bounce shit off of. There's no conversation or anything. So yeah, let me know what you thought of this solo episode, and I will catch you all next week. Bye-bye!